Hello and welcome. My name is Stephen Pratchner.
And my name's Dana Payne.
Dana and I both work on the GDK tools team at Microsoft. So in these days in which most of us are still primarily working remotely, it's more important than ever to have a robust set of tools that support remote development. So today, Dana and I will be demoing several features in the Microsoft GDK with Xbox extensions that support remote console development. Before we get to the demos, I'll spend a few minutes talking about some remote work scenarios. Then I'll introduce you to the tools we'll be demoing today, and then we'll jump right into the demos themselves. So clearly, the pandemic has changed the way most of us work. Rather than the common scenario of having your development PC and one or more consoles in your office at work, or at least in the same building, we now have a variety of different possible work scenarios. For example, you may have a development PC in your home office and are using tools such as Visual Studio or the Xbox Manager to access one or more consoles in your office at work. Another common configuration is to use the remote desktop protocol to remote into a PC in your office and then to connect to your consoles from that PC. Finally, your home setup may consist of a set of third-party tools or tools written by your own studio, which then connect to the consoles back at work. The GDK with Xbox extensions offers several tools that support remote console development. Today, we'll focus on three: the Xbox Manager, Visual Studio, and Pix. Xbox Manager is a tool used for remotely managing your consoles. This tool supports several common workflows, such as setting up groups of consoles, deploying titles, monitoring consoles, interacting with them remotely using virtual controllers, and so on. Visual Studio is, of course, the centerpiece of the edit, deploy, debug loop that developers do many times per day. And we've extended the Visual Studio IDE with several new tools that are specific to console development. And Pix is our profiling tool. Pix captures allow you to diagnose performance issues related to the GPU, CPU, memory, and file I/O. So now, on to the demos. I'll hand it over to Dana to show you the Xbox Manager.
Hi, I'm here today to talk about our premier developer tool for console game development, Xbox Manager, and how we've focused our efforts on supporting remote game development through that tool. Our goal is to make developing on remote consoles as easy as having one right next to you. First, let's take a look at the interface of Xbox Manager. We currently have a console selected, and at the very top, that console's information is summarized for you. Below that, we have a section called the Console Selector. At the bottom half of that console selector, I already have several remote consoles I'm connected to. You can see bits of information about each console, their general connection health, as well as their name and host name, and then you have the ability to take action on individual consoles through a menu. In this menu, you can reboot the console, you can update the console's operating system, you can refresh the console or reset it to factory. These are several actions that you can take on individual consoles in the console selector. To the right of the console selector, you'll see a vertical menu of categories of features. On the home screen, the first item is an input field where you can deploy any game or app from one of your network drives to the console. And below that is a list of games and apps that are already deployed to this console. Below the home screen is the remote control screen. This area is where we've focused a lot of attention and have been responding to customer feedback to better enhance remote work experiences. In remote control, you can see there is a window directly showing the console. As I hover my mouse over the window, you can see a remote cursor following along. I can interact with the console by clicking my mouse. and you can see I can select different items on the menu. On the right, you can see that I also have two physical controllers that are connected to my remote PC, and through those physical controllers, I can interact with the remote consoles. I can also use a virtual controller if I don't have a physical one available. Select Controller plus Keyboard, and you'll see an image of our virtual controller, which you can control using your mouse. Below the remote control screen, we have some other tools for further interacting with consoles remotely. There's the media capture screen, where you can take and manage both snapshots and video clips. We also have some networking tools, the ability to change the console settings remotely, and also some automation tooling. Now back to the console selector on the left. You can see above the individual consoles, I have groups. You can easily create groups from any of your connected consoles. Here I have created a demo group already. If I open the demo group, you'll notice that the vertical menu has changed now. On the home screen, you still have this deployment input box where you can drag and drop or enter a path to a game or app to deploy that game or app. Only in this case, you'll be deploying it to the entire group. Below that group deployment, you'll have a list of all the consoles in that group. You'll see some helpful information summarized about each of the consoles in that group as well. Below the home view is the remote control view for groups. There you will see there are two viewing speeds, low FPS and high FPS. We are now viewing the low FPS screen. This screen displays each console at only 1 frame per second or less in order to conserve bandwidth. This view is ideal for managing a large number of consoles at once, for example, in a lab management scenario. Here you can see a summary of any connection issues you may have. If you had any errors, you would be able to zoom right to those consoles with those errors. You can also zoom out to see the consoles in a large group more easily. So you can imagine if I had 50 consoles perhaps instead of just 4 to 6 consoles, that could come in very handy. To the right, we have filters that will also help you to sort through a large number of consoles. For example, I can hover over individual consoles and select the little heart icon. And now I can filter on favorites and only see those two consoles. So that will allow me to just focus on a subset of the group at a time if I wish. Next is the high FPS view. This view is best suited for real-time play testing as well as multiplayer development and testing. In this view, I have a console list that will allow me to choose up to 4 consoles to see in the highest frame rate possible. So by clicking on a single console, I can see them pop up into the top section, and now I can move the selection list. And when these consoles are connected, they're now running at the highest frames per second available, the highest bandwidth available. This will allow you to interact in real time and do some real play testing. In this view, you can also pair individual consoles to specific controllers. So by dropping down the list for each console view, you can see that I have those physical controllers listed in the drop-down, so I could assign controller number 1 to that console, controller number 2 to the second, and then perhaps the virtual controller to another one, and then I'll select none for that fourth one. And then if I want to send input with the first controller, so now I'm interacting real time with that first console with my first controller, and then I can send input with the second controller, and that will go to the second console. So I can interact with each console using their own assigned controller, and this will enable remote multiplayer testing as well as other interactive gameplay tests. So if your studio is doing development on Xbox consoles, these are some of the ways we have focused our efforts on Xbox Manager to make developing with remote consoles as easy as having them right next to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Dana. Awesome demo. Now I'll move on and show you the remote work features in the Visual Studio IDE and in Pix.
The GDK with Xbox extensions adds several new windows to the Visual Studio IDE to support remote console development. These windows can all be found under the Xbox menu. The first one we'll look at is the Xbox Gaming Explorer. This window streamlines common developer workflows, primarily around remote debugging. Things like package debugging, attaching to running titles, transitioning between the game lifecycle states, and so on. Gaming Explorer shows me a list of the titles installed on my console. I'm going to go ahead and debug a packaged build of this title named Reflex. As the debugger is attaching, Gaming Explorer updates to show us that Reflex is now running. The next window to look at is the Xbox System Monitor. This window provides a task manager-like view of performance on the console, currently focused on memory usage. The System Monitor has this additional tab that gives you detailed diagnostic tracing from the console. And finally, the Xbox Console view. This remote view is built on the same technology from the Xbox Manager that Dana demoed, but with a subset of the features. Now I'm going to switch to Pix, our profiling tool. And the first thing to note here is this remote video control in the lower left of the layout. This, again, is the same control you saw in Xbox Manager and in Visual Studio. The primary CPU capture type in Pix is called a timing capture. And before starting a timing capture, you can select an option to capture video frames. Switching to a capture, we can see that the video frames are embedded directly within the timeline, right along with all your other timing-based data. This enables you to see what was displayed on the console while diagnosing performance issues. Furthermore, selecting a video frame populates this element details view with a larger image of the frame. And from here, you can pop the window out to get an even bigger view. Finally, right-clicking on the image gives you the option to copy it to the clipboard or to save it as an external file.
And thank you for listening today. So this slide contains a link to the Microsoft GDK that you can use to get started with game development for both console and PC. And keep in mind that the demos that Dana and I did today require the Xbox extensions, which are available through the ID at Xbox program. Thanks again for listening, and have a great day.